Now that we've discussed the situation in Belgium, we'll take a quick look at further south on the Western Front. So this map shows the placement of both armies by late August. But very quickly, what we have to see is, based on this line, is that the French, while during the Belgian crisis, so we see already by this point, you see the Belgian First Army under von Kluck and the Second under Bülow, right? Moving here. The French, remember, were still interested in pursuing their own war plan, right? Plan 17. And in that effect, early in August, General Joffre, commander of the French armies, asked General Bonneau to take his 7 Corps to seize a town in Alsace called Mulhouse, Mulhausen or Mulhouse. So the idea is that this Alsatian army and unit would take Mulhouse here to further move in and occupy Alsace. And Bonneau was not very interested in following the order. He was reluctant, and he moved slow. And he moved so slow that, in fact, he moved a very small distance, but it took him 2 days to get into position. In doing so, what he did was actually captured the city of Mulhouse for 24 hours. German reinforcements came in from Strasbourg here and proceeded to attack Bonneau and knocked him back. This absolutely frustrated General Joffre. Bonneau didn't seem to put up much of a fight at all and simply retreated to Belfort right here on the Swiss border. He gained nothing. He lost men in the process and didn't even try to defend the town very, very vigorously when the Germans challenged him. Joffre was prone to firing slackers, and he fired General Bonneau right away. But this should also give you a little hint. Remember, a couple weeks ago, we looked at those basic principles of military operations that we were going to pay attention to when we look at these. And we talked about, right, staying on the offensive, right? You can't always win a battle by playing defense. One of the other ones was unity of command. The idea that once an order is given, people may disagree, but they follow the orders. What this reveals is that one of the problems the French experience in this war are unity of command problems. Is that while the German unity of command is quite strong, especially from what we've seen so far here in Belgium, and when they do deviate from the plan, it's that a senior commander, right, takes responsibility. Like Hindenburg will make this order and then take responsibility for it, and all of his junior generals will follow suit. So there is still unity of command. The French will struggle from this, especially as we see the Battle of the Frontiers unfold. So this is a weakness, but the French are still able to prevail with the English. But there's other issues for the Germans. But this early first movement is on the south of the line, right here on the Swiss border, and that's General Pau now, because by this point he was replaced. But it's General Bonneau, Bonneau, took his 7 Corps, which is the army of Alsace, and moved them into Mulhouse. And the Germans call it Mulhausen. But held the city for a grand total of like 24 hours. The Germans moved in from Strasbourg and pushed this army all the way back to Belfort. Later on, this offensive operations in the frontier begins. The French, are trying to execute Plan 17, but within a span of days, General Joffre realizes that the German army's main force is actually north of him and trying to swing around in an envelopment movement coming from Belgium. Okay, so the Germans are also engaging the French here to keep them occupied. And it's these operations that will also become quite important. So, well, let's take a look very quickly at them. The Germans, or the French, will advance to Sonnenburg. The Germans were waiting for the French to basically move their line like this and overextend themselves and catch them. And when they did, they would push them back. So the Germans were willing to contest the French movement forward. So as you see from these blue dashed lines, that's what's happening on this line, is that they're willing to contest this move forward and allow the French to move forward, but only so far. The Germans fall back for 4 days. And the French start taking towns by 8/18, right? So August 18 of 1914, right? Sonnenburg is captured, right, by the French. And the German resistance starts to stiffen, so that by 20 August, what you have is a stiff German response. So the French are lured to move in further and further and further, and the Germans are fighting to keep the French on their toes and have a structured retreat. With the German retreat is being done that the Germans can lead the French into a position of weakness. And that's what's happened. So the French actually move ahead willingly, doing them a favor and leading themselves down into a position of weakness. And it's there that the Germans pounce. The French 1st and 2nd Army were not in close communications with each other as they should have been. So Generals Dubois and Castelnau. Okay, this French 1st and 2nd Army were supposed to move together this way. While doing so, because they were dressed off of each other's flank, they're supposed to stay in close contact to help coordinate their movements, just like we see with the Germans between von Kluck and Bülow in Belgium. Unity of command. What's happening? What's not happening? Well, in this case, we don't have these two following those rules very well, and their communication is also weak. So they don't dress off each other. They don't stay in good, close communication. And the Germans start fighting as one entity, right? So the Germans were very good at fighting as one group, one leader, one voice, one common purpose, unity of command. And so the German 6th under General Ruprecht and the 7th armies under General Meiringen counterattack. And they fight together as one unit. They coordinate their attack. Even though they're distant, they move in and strike. And when they do that, the Germans push the French back. By August 20th, they bring in the heavy artillery, doing great damage to the French 2nd Army. And by August 23rd, you have the French retreating all the way here to the Meurthe River. So this is the second point in the line moving up in that span in August where the Plan 17 is not working. There, the French are able to stage a good defense on strong positions, and they entrench themselves to await German attack here. Then we have the 3rd and 4th armies of the French. The 3rd Army under General Ruffey, and the 4th Army under General Langle. And what you're doing, okay, is General Joffre tasks them with moving through the Ardennes forest this way and moving on the cities of Arlon and Neufchâteau. There's Neufchâteau right there. Right. And Arlon. So moving on Arlon and Neufchâteau. And by doing that, in southern Belgium, this front's 25 miles long. The forest depth is 8 miles. And the German armies, the 4th and 5th, are stacked up. The 4th and 5th Army are sitting there waiting for the French to pop out of that forest and ready to destroy them. So they're ready to meet them head on with equal strength, and you have problems. This should not have been an attack that was ordered, because right here through the Ardennes, The problem you have on this 25-mile front is that it's a forest, and so it's hard to coordinate attack. It's hard to maneuver effectively. It's hard to bring up your heavy artillery and your other pieces to support your attack. So it's generally hard to coordinate. The French cavalry, additionally, charged with being the eyes of the army, just as they had during the age of Napoleon, just as they had in the Franco-Prussian War. The French cavalry did not see, could not spot the enemy position of the German Fourth Armies and Fifth Armies. This is a problem because they were there, hiding and waiting. One group did spot the German Fourth and Fifth Armies, and of course the Fourth Army here under General Albrecht, and the Fifth Army here under the Crown Prince himself, Kaiser Wilhelm's son, the heir to the throne. Okay? It was French pilots, aviators, flying in early airplanes that saw the enemy positions, scouted them, and reported them, as you saw in the movies, right? The World War I specials. You saw reported them to General Joffre, who didn't show all that much interest in the reports, basically saying they're wrong, but was very interested in the flying machines. The pilots were ignored, and the German aviators knew exactly where the French were, and they knew that the French were going to move through the forest, and where the French were positioned in echelon, as if so one flank broke, the whole of the flank breaks. So echelon meaning a situation where I'm going to draw, pardon me, on the map, I'm going to draw a little bit. So in echelon, there's sort of like that. Sort of like that. And so if one flank falls, the rest of them go down. They topple. Okay? And so that's something to look out for. So the Germans are waiting here and here for the French to pop through the Ardennes forest. And they do, right here and right here. And what happens is the Germans are sitting there waiting. And that echelon of them sitting like that, sort of echelon like that, exactly what happened. The flank caved, and those things started toppling, and the French had to pull back. The line collapsed by August 24th, and the Fourth Army wound up behind the river Meuse, and the Third Army followed shortly thereafter. So that what we get is the Meuse River, right? This is the Meuse River here, and the Third and Fourth Army will be behind it by August 24th. The Army of Lorraine here was withdrawn and moved. And so what you have is this part of the line. The French have dug in, but you also have the French advances being pushed back. The Germans are experiencing successes. And the next major operation is here, in this area between the Belgian operation and the north of France. So this is important. It leads to the battles of Sambre in France and also Mons, the Mons River. General Lanzerac, warned by General Joffre of an envelopment to his left. Well, first, Lanzerac warned General Joffre, saying that the main body of the German army is actually coming this way, and he is about to be enveloped on his left side or left flank. Okay? So that would be disastrous for the entire French line. And so he reported it to his superior officer, General Joffre. Joffre was not that convinced. He was still worried about Plan 17. And as late as August 14th, Joffre was still concerned about Plan 17. But by the 20th of August, as these events unfold, Joffre starts to change his mind, especially with the Belgian forts cracking. So there, he sent the Fifth Army between the Meuse and the Lamb rivers to join with the British Expeditionary Force here on their left and serve as this strong protection against the German wing. So this right wing of von Moltke's, right, this right wing under Kluck and von Bülow, right, this is for the French under the Fifth Army under Lanzerac and the British Expeditionary Force under General John or Field Marshal French, Sir John French, and that gets confusing because his last name is French, but he's English. This is Keegan points out is a battle of encounter. Okay, this was not the order for there was not an order for a general engagement, but what happened is the soldiers started to encounter each other, and what you have are attacks. What also happens is that they make certainly a pitched fight over it, and what it leads to is that actually the Fifth under Lanzerac starts to pull back, and here the BEF feels it's left alone, and then it has to pull back. So what you get by this point, by late August, is a retreat. So the Battle of the Sambre, where Sir John Field Marshal French feels abandoned by the Fifth Army and General Lanzerac. Joffre worried about the competency and fighting spirit of Lanzerac. And the French and British allies pulling back, and the German army pushing through. So it looks like the Schlieffen Plan, despite some possible hitches, is actually working. Next, we'll see how this responds with the battle further in the Battle of the Frontiers and leads to the Battle of the Marne.